Mr. Secretary, you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Was that an accurate statement 4 months ago?
The main objective of this was to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Their main sites were obliterated. We're watching over them, and we're holding that issue.
Day 9 of the war, on 60 Minutes, you assured the American people of Iranian surrender. Does that remain your prediction?
Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective, and it remains so.
4 dead Americans, nearly 100 wounded in just 2 weeks, and a staggering $67 billion request to fund a war that was supposedly already won. How did we get here? During a relentless Senate hearing, Senator Jon Ossoff, leveraging his fierce investigative journalism roots, cornered Pete Hegseth under oath with one devastating question. Was your statement truthful, yes or no? Just 14 days into the Iran war, Hegseth confidently declared the enemy's military completely destroyed. 3 weeks later, he went on 60 Minutes to promise the American people total victory and Iran's imminent surrender. Yet, 5 grim months later, the conflict has violently reignited, and Hegseth is desperately begging for almost $70 billion more. When Ossoff demanded a simple yes or no regarding those premature victory laps, Hegseth panicked, filibustering until the clock ran out to dodge accountability completely. Watch this shocking evasion unfold below. If you want to help us keep exposing these hard-hitting truths, hit the join button below for exclusive videos.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your testimony. And General Kane, let me just begin by expressing on behalf of all Georgians our immense gratitude and admiration for the service members who are making tremendous sacrifices and conducting themselves with extraordinary selflessness and professionalism on behalf of the United States and our state's unified condolences and grief for the families of the 4 killed in action and our hope for a swift recovery for the nearly 100 wounded over the last 2 weeks. And thank you to you for your service to the nation. Mr. Hegseth, you're requesting roughly $68 billion for the department through this supplemental, correct?
67, yes.
And yesterday, your department stated publicly, quote, U.S. forces struck Iranian military command centers, maritime capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and air defense systems to degrade Iran's ability to continue attacking commercial vessels. That was a press release from your department. Is that a broadly accurate characterization of ongoing operations?
That sounds broadly accurate, yes.
On day 14 of this conflict, Mr. Secretary, day 14, nearly 5 months ago, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. That was on day 14 of the war. Was that an accurate statement?
They didn't have a Navy any longer. It was completely sunk. Their missiles were buried underneath a lot of their underground facilities, and their defense industrial base has been almost completely destroyed. So as far as a military assessment of Iran's capabilities, it didn't mean by any stretch of the imagination absolute zero, but their capabilities
Mr. Secretary,
at the lowest level
you
they've
stated
been in a very
that
long time.
on day 14 of this conflict, in the second week of the conflict, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Was that an accurate statement? Yes or no?
Iran's ability to challenge the United States of America at the level at which we're capable of.
That's not what I asked you, Mr. Secretary. You said on day 14 Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Yes or no? Was that an accurate statement?
What the American military has done to the
question?
Iranian military is a historic military
Will you
defeat,
answer the
and
question
they're ineffective
under oath?
in that context.
3 weeks later, you declared victory. That was now nearly 4 months ago. 3 weeks after you'd already said Iran's military was destroyed and combat ineffective, you said, quote, Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory. You said Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. And you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Were those accurate statements?
It certainly was, on behalf of the men and women in uniform, a historic military victory over Iran.
Had Iran's military been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come? That was a statement that you made 4 months ago.
They had 160 naval vessels
You need
in
to
the
answer
Blue
the
Water
questions,
Navy,
Mr.
and they're gone.
Secretary.
Their Air Force is completely combat ineffective, and they don't have a defense industrial base. So describe to me a country that doesn't have an Air Force, a Navy, or a defense industrial base, and I will describe to you a country that does not have an effective military. It can lob missiles.
Mr. Secretary, you stated 4 months ago that Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. Has Iran's military been, for the last 4 months, combat ineffective?
It's been set back not just years, but likely decades.
You stated we had, quote,
build at the level it did before, and not even close. It doesn't mean it doesn't have capabilities.
Mr. Secretary, you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Was that an accurate statement 4 months ago?
The main objective of this was to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Their main sites were obliterated. We're watching over them, and we're holding them at issue. If they don't give them up at the table, there's other ways we can take them away.
Early in the conflict
Iran will
on
never
day
have a
3,
nuclear
Mr.
weapon.
Secretary, early in the conflict, day 3, you said one of those core objectives was to, quote, destroy the missile threat. And as you restated on day 5, to, quote, obliterate Iran's missiles and drones. Those were clearly and repeatedly stated core objectives of the campaign, which 4 months ago you declared had been completed victoriously with every single objective achieved. Were those objectives achieved 4 months ago?
No one ever stated that every single missile was gone. Ultimately, combat ineffective means they're not able to dig them out of their UGFs and shoot at us.
Had the missile threat
It doesn't mean they
been
don't have
defeated
underground
4 months
facilities
ago?
where they put missiles in them and hold on to them because they're the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. So we never expected they would stop having capabilities to shoot. The question is at scale against an opponent like the United States of America, which went toe-to-toe with them and Iran couldn't.
You stated on March 8th, day 9 of the war, on 60 Minutes, you assured the American people of Iranian surrender. Does that remain your prediction?
Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective, and it remains so.
So just to review, you will not answer whether your statement made on the 14th day of the war that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and made combat ineffective was a truthful statement to the American people as you sit here and ask for tens of billions more for the conflict.
Senator's time has
Had a
expired.
historic and effective military campaign against the largest state sponsor of terrorism.
Won't answer the question.
Senator
Peters
Peters is rec.
Let's be absolutely clear about the undeniable data-driven demolition that Senator Jon Ossoff just executed against Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, turning a standard congressional funding request into a brutal forensic audit of wartime contradictions. The sheer mathematics and empirical evidence defining this confrontation are devastating. We are now grinding into month 5 of a conflict that the Pentagon prematurely declared a total triumph, reeling from a fresh, documented toll of 4 American service members killed in action and nearly 100 severely wounded in just the last 14 days alone. Yet, against this grim statistical reality of escalating casualties, Hegseth sat before the Senate demanding a staggering $67 billion, a figure quickly edging closer to a $70 billion blank check in supplemental appropriations, to continuously finance the exact same war he previously swore to the American public was already decisively won. Ossoff, drawing upon years of rigorous, evidence-based discipline as a former investigative journalist and chief executive of a media company dedicated to exposing corruption and global war crimes, stripped away all expected political theater. He did not deliver a grandstanding speech. Instead, he relied entirely on hard data, weaponizing Hegseth's own timeline of absolute statements against him in a masterclass of prosecutorial interrogation. The trap Ossoff laid was purely evidentiary, anchored firmly by a Department of Defense press release, published a mere 24 hours before the hearing commenced. This official government document confirmed, in undeniable black and white, that United States armed forces were still actively executing kinetic strikes against Iranian command centers, advanced missile silos, drone launch pads, and integrated air defense networks in a desperate, ongoing effort to degrade the enemy's persistent capacity to attack commercial vessels, armed with this unassailable proof of a highly active and lethal adversary, Ossoff systematically rewound the clock to precisely day 14 of the war. He presented Hegseth with his own verbatim public declaration, the categorical, on-the-record claim that Iran's military had been absolutely destroyed and rendered completely combat ineffective. With the cold, unwavering precision of an auditor holding the receipts, Ossoff asked a narrowly tailored, closed-loop question requiring a strict binary data point. Was that specific statement truthful, yes or no? Hegseth, instantly trapped by the mathematical impossibility of his own fabricated narrative, could not possibly answer yes, because his own department's 24-hour-old press release definitively proved the enemy was still heavily armed and aggressively fighting back. Concurrently, he refused to answer no, fully aware that doing so would constitute an on-the-record admission of deceiving the United States public to justify the war's initial escalation. Consequently, Hegseth panicked and filibustered, desperately attempting to flood the zone by changing the subject to sunken navies and buried defense industrial bases, completely dodging the sole binary metric Ossoff demanded under oath. Refusing to let the brazen evasion stand or break his focus, Ossoff simply loaded the next sequence of documented evidence into the record. He pointed directly to the 3-week mark of the conflict, a timestamp where Hegseth triumphantly declared Operation Epic Fury to be a historic and overwhelming military victory, explicitly stating the United States had achieved every single objective and successfully rendered Iran combat ineffective for years to come. When Hegseth attempted to pivot away from this data point by retroactively shrinking the parameters of success, falsely claiming the only real objective was always merely preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, Ossoff instantly unleashed a chronological barrage of Hegseth's own recorded metrics to shatter the pivot. Exhibit A. On day 3 of the war, Hegseth went on the record explicitly stating that a core objective of the campaign was to completely destroy the Iranian missile threat. Exhibit B. On day 5, he publicly cemented the administration's goal to entirely obliterate Iran's missiles and drones. Ossoff systematically demonstrated that the exact baseline objectives Hegseth claimed were 100% achieved in week 3 were demonstrably false by month 5, forcing the cornered secretary to confess under oath that the missile stockpiles were, in fact, never entirely wiped out. To permanently seal the inescapable trap, Ossoff introduced the Day 9 data point, Hegseth's primetime television appearance on 60 Minutes, where he unequivocally guaranteed the American people that Iran would unconditionally surrender. By sharply juxtaposing this historical guarantee against the present-day reality of 100 new American battlefield casualties and an urgent, desperate plea for $67 billion more in military funding, Ossoff unequivocally proved that the triumphant declarations utilized to sell the war possessed absolute zero statistical correlation with the bloody reality currently unfolding on the ground. Ossoff never once needed to waste the committee's time formulating rhetorical accusations or dramatically calling the Secretary of Defense a liar. He simply overlaid the department's current, verified casualty numbers and active operational logs directly on top of Hegseth's premature victory laps. The resulting contrast was mathematically and logically impossible for the Secretary to reconcile. A cross-question after rigorous question, presented with undisputed dates, direct quotes, and official Pentagon documentation, a man directly asking the United States government for an additional $67 billion vehemently refused to utter the simple word yes or no to verify the truthfulness of his own prior statements. This was not a typical congressional debate. It was a devastating, irrefutable presentation of empirical evidence where the most damning factor of all was the calculated silence of a secretary who simply could not afford to align his past fictional promises with today's brutal, undeniable data